Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Billy, Gym City Welding, glad to have you here. Today's episode is a very special episode for me. Those of you that have been watching the channel for a little while heard on the last couple videos I was talking about hitting that magic milestone of 1,000 subscribers, and I'm here to tell you that we finally did it. As of this recording today, I'm 1,037 subscribers, and I never thought in a million years that I would get that far. I really didn't think I would reach 100. So to have all of you tune in consistently and watch the videos, it means the world to me. It's an honor and a pleasure to do this, and I'm having so much fun doing it, and getting an opportunity to meet people that I never normally, under normal circumstances, wouldn't have encountered or spoke to. People stop me at the shows. You know, I've touched on that before. And then the relationships I've forged through other YouTubers who are kind of into the same thing that I am, that I'm doing here. Guys like Cadillac Dan and Lone Star Lowe's, and the list just goes on and on and on. Tijuana Rickard, he's another one. That guy's awesome. Those relationships I've been able to forge with people and have contact with is just amazing, and it encourages me to keep moving forward and keep doing this. So to the 1,037 or 38 of you, thank you very, very much. This video is, there's a couple different things going on with this video. One was, of course, thanking everybody for being here. Two is today we're gonna talk about some Lowrider history, Lowrider collectibles, and things that I've just accumulated over the years that I find that, or that I think that other people might find interesting. And then last but not least will be our Speak on It topic and our 1,000 subscriber giveaway. That's right, you heard me, 1,000 subscriber giveaway. So more details about that at the end of the video, so please stay tuned for that. Also in this video, I want to talk about some new parts I have for the 64 Impala build. Some pretty important pieces that I needed, that I needed to get the chassis to a stage where I can do a full mock-up to like hold the cylinders and coils in place. Also, I was able to secure through the good people at Restoration World. These guys hooked me up with, I shouldn't say hooked me up. I went up there and I got the stuff, but they helped me out. Their customer service is second to none. I picked up a battery tray. My original battery tray was shot, and these guys had what I needed in stock. They had the tray, let's see, the battery clamp, hold down, and the bolts that go with that. You can buy these parts individually through them, or you can buy it as a kit, and current pricing on that kit is 29 bucks. So for $29, you get new battery tray and everything you need to properly secure your battery to your Impala. Again, that's Restoration World. They're out of Huber Heights, Ohio, right off I-70. They got everything you could ever want for an Impala, Camaro, Chevelle, Nova, you name it. If they don't have it in stock, they can get it. So shout out to those guys. Thank you for all the help. I appreciate you. The other parts that I got was actually through Mr. Impala. So if you are a fan of the King of Chevys podcast, or are on any kind of social media and are into Impalas and Lowriders, odds are you've heard of Mr. Impala, Brent Reese. And I needed a 58 to 64 Power Glide kickdown linkage. And yeah, I could have went aftermarket. I could have bought something like through Jags or Summit or places like that, but I wanted to keep it kind of OG in the engine compartment. I didn't want, a giant aftermarket kickdown bracket to stand out. So I've been looking for a stock Power Glide kickdown. Messaged him, he says, yeah, got one. This is the price, and I'll get it to you. And he did. So I've got that here. It's right off the car, which is great. It's still got all the 60 years of accumulated grease and grime on it, which I'll be sure and clean that up, but that's all part of the fun. Let's see, the next parts I got, again, were for the suspension. So I got my deep cups for the front and rear, as well as the donuts that you see right there in the front, and then the grade 8 bolts for the front cylinders to tighten those down. Those are from Switches by Jay. You've heard me talk about him many times on the channel. He's actually our club president for the club I'm prospecting for, Dedication Car Club. And I was at his shop to purchase these, and the way Jay's shop is set up, it's like he's got, where he does all his installations, fabrications, and all that stuff, his hydraulic install, air ride install. Then he has a small little office that has it's kind of like a showroom. And so he had all these things there, and when he was checking me out for these, I noticed something in his case, his little display case, that caught my eye, and it just made me think about all the things over the years that I've collected when it comes to low riding and stuff that I've accumulated. And one of those things that he had in his case was this guy right here. This is an original CCE hydraulics tank sticker, which would have been error correct on this particular pump that I've showed in the pump video. If you haven't checked that one out, go back a couple videos and I just go over brief history of liftgate pumps, and specifically to the CCE brand. And but anyways, this is the sticker that would have came on this pump, and Jay had this in his display case, and I couldn't believe it when I seen it, because I just made this video about this logo and talking about this sticker in particularly, and he happened to have one, and I said, how much do you want for it? And he goes, for you can have it. And I was like, oh, holy cow, that's amazing, because I don't know that I'm going to stick it on the pump yet, because this is actually where it goes, but it's so cool to hold in my hand. When I was a kid, I was so into this kind of stuff that I just wanted anything that had to do with low riding and hydraulics. And even something as simple as this back in the day would have blown my mind. And here we are going on 30 years later, and it's just amazing stuff. So shout out to Jay. Thank you for this, buddy. I appreciate you. But like I was saying, this led me into thinking about all the things over the years that I've collected, or not really just collected, but just kind of accumulated that was low riding related. Some of those things were as simple as it could have been lowrider magazines, it could have been hydraulic parts, it could have been all different kinds of things. And some of the things that I have here that I wanted to show was, just for starters, I had a very close friend of mine who worked for Dayton Wire Wheel, who was able to get me a gold spoke and chrome nipple from, this was almost 20 years ago. He got this for me for my birthday and gave it to me, so I've always held on to this. This was before I ever had a set of Daytons, or any wire wheels for that matter, but this has always been pretty important to me. And it got me thinking about, are there other guys out there that were about my age, or could be a little younger, a little older, because my channel, the analytics from my channel tell me that most of my viewers are between the ages of 30 and 50. So I'm assuming that some of you were right there, along with me back then, into this kind of stuff at the same time. So it got me wondering, did other people collect and save this kind of stuff? What do guys have hiding out there? So it's stuff like that that's, I think, is really cool and interesting. But so I got this gold spoke from Dayton, which was pretty important. Back then, being in low riding wasn't quite as easy as it is now. And I say that because my meaning of that is pre-internet. I would say to my viewers that are 25 and under, maybe even 30 and under, before the internet came around, we relied on VHS tapes, Trucha, Cali Swingin'. Of course, Lowrider magazine had their own brand of tapes, and I bought dozens of them, and I wore them out. Like my Cali Swingins are shot. I need some more of those, so hopefully someday they'll put them on a DVD or Blu-ray transfer. But I just absolutely loved them. So that was all before the internet stuff. And of course, the other big thing was like catalogs. Back then, it wasn't just get online and look up a part and this is how much it costs and how much it costs to ship. It was nothing like that. It was an actual catalog. So back when I was younger and I would go to all the car shows, I would look for the vendors, and especially at the Lowrider shows. And for me, being where I'm at in this part of the country here in the Midwest, 99.9% of the time it was Cool Cars. And these guys always had catalogs, full color, spread catalogs. And I must have read these things 1,000 times, just going over them, what parts I would want someday and things like that. This one happens to be from 2000, and I believe this one's probably from 02, maybe 01, 02, because CCE Cool Cars went from like having their etched backing plates with the CCE old school logo. They switched over to this logo here, which you can see on the tank, the back of the tank. So I would date this probably 2001, 2002. But yeah, so I would hoard these things and just look at them religiously and daydream, all day long about the parts I would want. The other things that I would pick up would be like, car show flyers. Back then, you could actually mail away to the show promoters and they would send these things to you in the mail. Cool Cars Southern Showdown was a really big show here for us in the Midwest, based out of Louisville, Kentucky, where Cool Cars is from. Southern Showdown was like the one show a year you just didn't want to miss because something almost always special happened at that show. Another show would have been like Cruise Fest Nationals. If you're a Midwest, Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky guy or gal, you know about Cruise Fest, and it's become pretty infamous over the years about some things that happened at that show, and ultimately the downfall of that show. But the point I'm trying to make is that it was, if you were in Dayton, Ohio in mid to late 90s and in the early 2000s, the Cruise Fest Nationals was it. That was the place to be. And lucky for me, it was right in my own backyard. I mean, I remember like my second or third year. I don't think it was the first year. It might have been the second and third year. I had skipped school on Friday so I could go because I just didn't want to miss anything. I was willing to take the risk and get in trouble. And, looking back on it, yeah, I was pretty dumb, but I'm glad I did it because those were just, you're young and those are just some fun times to have. And that experience just had a lasting impression on me. And that kind of segues into my next little story here is, so I was going to Cruise Fest Nationals pretty consistently as a kid. It moved around quite a bit, but I was also, reading Lowrider magazine back then. And the magazine, just like for everybody else, was it. You waited at the newsstand for it to come out, or at least I did. And I remember like summertime cutting grass, saving up money so I could go buy an issue that was like $5.25, which, it seemed like a lot back then, but when you look back on it now, it's like, that was nothing, but for a young kid, it was a lot. So, but I remember waiting, for them to be delivered, and I collected, gosh, I must have hundreds of Lowrider magazines. Some pretty special ones that stand out would be in 2002, Lowrider magazine was celebrating its 25th anniversary, and Lowrider magazine put out a special, very special issue This came in the mail just like you see here, and this was the very first issue of Lowrider magazine that was a double issue thing that you got in the mail. So carefully pull this out here. So yeah, you got the 25th anniversary, or sorry, you had the original reissue of the first pressing of the first issue, which I believe was January 1977. But in the same packet came a double cover 25th anniversary issue for that January. Yeah, January of '02. So it was truly a 25th anniversary issue. This was a collector cover with two different covers. You had this one, and then you had a corresponding cover that had two other cars. This was the one that I got in the mail because of my subscription back then. I could kick myself now for not going and buying the other one on the newsstands, but this one was pretty special to me. In 2002, I was going to a lot of shows, a lot of car shows, and I was traveling some, like Indianapolis, Louisville, Kentucky, all different places here in Ohio. So being that this was a 25th anniversary issue, one of the things I did when I was younger is I collected autographs. And that was a way for me to just have a memento of something from the show or somebody I met, or something I could hold on to and brag to my buddies, hey, I got so-and-so's autograph from blah, 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 you know what I mean? And it was like, people get autographs on baseball cards and football helmets and all kinds of things. But for me, this was it. If I could get signatures in these, I was the happiest kid in the world. So I took this specific issue with me to pretty much every event that I went to in '02. And just quickly going over some of the autographs that I have in this issue. And the reason I bring that up about how this happened is because Southern Showdown, which was the Flyers, that I showed you earlier, Southern Showdown was the one that I took this issue to that I got the most autographs at, because Southern Showdown, I believe back then was, I don't think it was a Lowrider sanctioned event, but it was just one of those things in the Midwest you just didn't miss. And a lot of famous people, people I would consider to be famous, would always attend that show. Anyways, long story short, I took this issue with me to that particular show, and I remember pulling into the fairgrounds that they had it at, and I stopped to pay to get into the place, and I seen a guy walk by out of the corner of my eye, and I had to do a double take because I realized who it was, and it happened to be no other but Mr. Cali Swingin' himself, KJ. And I parked my car, and I ran up to him and introduced myself to him, and I said, Mr. KJ, my name's Billy. I'm happy you're here. Nice to meet you. Is there any way you can sign my magazine for me? And he looked at it, and he's like, yeah, I could probably do that. And he signed the back of it for me. So he put to Billy, KJ Cali Swingin' 2002. And he had, if you know KJ from Cali Swingin', he's got this signature laugh, and he signed it for me, and I was like, wow, and he had that laugh, and it was just a good time. He was a very nice guy, and continues to be, I should say. Sometimes he's on Cali Swingin' with his son, who pretty much runs the show now over there. Bear with me. So this particular issue ended up being the Las Vegas Super Show issue for that for January of 2002, and the hydraulic competition vehicles were always was a big draw for me for the magazine. Obviously, the show cars, I love that stuff, but the hydraulic stuff I really gravitated towards. Before I get to that, one of the people also at Southern Showdown that year happened to be no other than Saul Vargas, Wild Child from Lifestyle Car Club. He was a photographer for Lowrider magazine back then, and he was there with Alberto Lopez that day, and at the same event that KJ was at. So I don't know this for sure. I just kind of put two and two together. I think Alberto, Saul Vargas, and KJ all came either on the same flight or they drove or however they got there. They were all there in the same day, so they must have came together. That's the only thing I could think of. But Lowrider magazine was there taking photos of Southern Showdown for the magazine, so they did feature that every year. Saul wrote to me, "To Billy, keep up the good work. Saul Vargas, Wild Child." So that was obviously really special. I've always looked up to Lifestyle Car Club. You know, some of the most amazing cars in history when it comes to you know, show car builds. And Saul Vargas, he's, you know, a very famous photographer, not only for Lowrider magazine but for his actual show car, Wild Child. So it was really cool to get to meet him. So getting back to the hydraulic portion of this issue, and I know this is really far away, guys, just bear with me. I'll make it closer. There was a lot of guys who were competing on the lowrider circuit for points, trying to win points to go to Vegas and compete in the hydraulic competitions, and they would tour pretty much the Midwest. One particular name that I can think of right off the top of my head, and unfortunately he passed away, him and his wife, in a very unfortunate automobile accident, was Wayne Costa. Somewhere in my garage and in my hundreds of lowrider issues, I have Wayne Costa's autograph from a Southern Showdown event. Excuse me. And those of you that didn't know Wayne or didn't know his story, do yourself a favor, look him up. The guy was just fully dedicated to Lowrider magazine, to the hydraulic competition. He had I believe it was a Mighty Max truck that was just, man, it was one of the best builds I had ever seen in person. And Wayne was a really, really nice guy. And like I said, unfortunately, he was returning home from the Miami Lowrider event in Miami, Florida. And I think he lived in North Carolina. And him and his wife were in an automobile accident and unfortunately lost their lives. But anyways, Wayne was one of those guys that would travel. And a lot of these other guys that were at the Las Vegas 2001 Hydraulic World Championship were at Southern Showdown that year, and at some various other shows that I went to. But I was able to get, let's see, Brett Kopitz. Brett Kopitz was dancing. He was a hop judge. So I got to meet him, got his autograph. He called me Billy Lolo. It was awesome. You know, it was pretty cool just being a little kid and having him say that, and he autographed this for me. I also got Jimmy from Show and Go in Chicago. Jimmy had a car called Foreplay, which was a four-door 64 or 60. I think it was a 64. It could have been a 62 Chevy Nova or Chevy 2. That was a dancer. Really wild car. Jimmy was a hell of a guy. Very nice guy. Very larger than life kind of guy. If you knew him, his personality and stuff, but he was a good dude. And I went up to him and I asked him to sign my magazine, and he goes, "Why would you want my autograph?" And I just, being a young kid, you know, he was from Chicago, which it's about 5.5 hours from Dayton. I just thought, you know, I thought I would get his autograph, and I'm glad I did. Let's see, who else? Carlton Tucker with their Bermuda Triangle Cutlass. Carlton was a favorite of mine on the competition circuit. That guy, he was a pretty big character, you know, larger than life kind of guy, and he always had really clean G-bodies, hoppers and dancers. So he was kind enough to autograph this for me. Really nice guy. Let's see, who else do I have? This was I remember seeing this car for the very first time at the Indy Lowrider event and it was built by a guy that his name was Todd Wilt, and Todd Wilt was really well known for his Toyota Tacoma mini trucks, and he ended up building a dancer for that was sponsored by CC Hydraulics that flipped over at Indy Truck Bash on Lucas Oil Drag Strip Stadium, where they hold the U.S. Nationals, the Funny Car Nationals, and stuff like that. He actually was hopping out there and rolled the Tacoma, which, you know, it made history because that was, for me, that was the first time I'd ever seen a vehicle flip. But long story short, he did custom builds back then. He had a shop. His vehicles always had like Wilt built stickers on them and stuff like that. Very nice guy, very humble guy. I remember meeting him, and I knew this was a build that he had done. The owner's name's in here, it escapes me right now, but I remember seeing this car for the first time, and I never really thought of a Mustang as a lowrider until I seen this car in person, and it just was larger than life, big, custom car back then. So I asked him to sign this for me, and he said, "To Billy, thanks, Todd Wilt." And again, he was an incredibly humble guy, really, really cool guy to be around and talk to. I think he's still involved in some way, shape, or form in the automotive world, be it like hot rods, rat rods, maybe even some mini truck stuff. I'm not sure. I need to try and catch up with him and talk to him, but he's around the Dayton area sometimes, between like Louisville, Indiana. So I need to catch up with him and get a chance to meet him or speak to him again. But anyways, so yeah, these were two very special issues. I'm glad I hung on to these over the years. Some of the other issues, I'm sure I'm not the only one that had collected these Lowrider magazines, but they're just a quick example would be like, this is Gangster's Santana 64. If you're into lowriding, you've heard of Gangster, you've seen Sunday Driver, or heard his episode of King of Chevy's podcast. This is one of my favorite issues. But there was actually some other magazines at the time that were pretty important too, because like I was saying earlier, before the internet, man, you did what you could, and magazines was the closest you could get. Some of those were Lowrider Bicycle. I've got probably a couple dozen of these, and I loved every one of them because I built model cars as a kid. I cut grass, and every chance I got, I bought a model car. It seemed like had a couple Lowrider bikes, nothing to write home about, but just some old Schwinn's and stuff like that. But anyways, yeah, Lowrider Bicycle. And then just real brief history that some of you may or may not know. So Alberto Lopez took over Lowrider Magazine from Sonny, the founder of Lowrider Magazine. And I've heard some accounts say that by the mid-'80s, lowriding in California was dying. Other things were coming into place, like your mini trucks and your cow bugs and stuff like that. And the lowrider movement had kind of trickled off a little bit. And here comes Alberto Lopez, and he picks up the magazine and just runs with it. And he made lowrider big. I mean, it was mostly not really well known outside of like, Arizona, maybe as far as like Texas. But for us in the Midwest, once Alberto took over, and truly actually worldwide, he was able to grow the magazine so huge that, guys like me here in Dayton, Ohio could get an issue at the local UDF or 7-Eleven or whatever it happened to be. But long story short, he eventually ended up selling his part in Lowrider Magazine and moved on and started another magazine, which was called Boulevard. Unfortunately, I don't have very many issues of this. I wish I had more. They were kind of scarce here, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know how long the magazine actually lasted, but I liked the format of this. There were, in a lot of ways, it was kind of superior to Lowrider Magazine, and it was a larger magazine. The photography was just incredible in some of these issues. But yeah, these were pretty important, so I collected these two. And like I said, I've got quite a few of them, but I wish I had more. You don't see them. I look on eBay, and I very rarely see issues of this magazine. So that's the other thing, guys. If you're looking to get into collecting any kind of thing like this, just start with the magazines and look on eBay. I see them from time to time. Some pretty rare older issues, all the way up into the 2000s issues. So yeah, that's pretty much my collectability with the whole Lowrider magazine thing. Like I said, of course I collected the tapes and I collected the catalogs, but something else that was really special to me. So I remember one particular show I went to was my very first Cruise Fest Nationals. It was 1997, and I remember reading the Lowrider magazines, and I remember reading there was this talk about this guy from Fairborn, Ohio, which is really close to me where I live out here in Dayton, and his name is Dean Carnes, and a lot of you may know him now from the TV show Street Outlaws. He goes by the name Disco Dean or Stinky Pinky or whatever it happens to be for that particular episode. But I remember reading about Dean in the magazines, and him being a local guy, and he had dancers, he had trackers back then, which trackers were really popular back then, but he was able to make them work as a dancer, and those things moved really good. So I remember going to Cruise Fest, and I had my CCE Cool Car shirt that I had bought, and I'm walking through the event, and none other than Dean Carnes walks literally like right next to me. And I remember seeing him, and I was like, oh my God, that's the guy from the magazine, because you had to know Dean back then. He always had like really wild haircuts, like spiky hair, and always different dyed different colors and stuff. And he wore Jinkos. He got me wearing Jinkos because I saw him wearing them, and I had to have them because I thought he was the coolest guy ever. But long story short, I see him walking by, and I asked him for his autograph. And he said, sure, yeah, I'll sign anything you got. And I said, well, can you sign my shirt, And he goes, yeah, go ahead and turn around. I'll sign your shirt. So I turn around, and he signs the shoulder of it. And I have that actually here today. So you have to forgive me. This thing it's shot. I had it hanging in my garage forever. But so this would have been the Cool Cars shirt. So they had the original Cool Cars logo. And then on the back side, they had a 63 Impala with the Cool Cars logo, which I always thought was literally the coolest logo ever because it had the chrome reflection in their logo. But long story short, he signs my right shoulder for me. So super nice, signs my shirt. I didn't look at it until I got home. I didn't take it off to look at what he actually wrote. I thought he just signed his autograph. But anyways, he signs this for me, and he says, hey kid, I got something for you. Follow me over here. So, little old me, at this time I'm 15 years old. So I'm following him over to that dance hot pit where all the competition vehicles are. And he reaches in his tracker, and he pulls out his switch box, and he pulls one of the switch extensions off, which now they call them bats, and I don't know why they call them bats, but anyways, long story short, I know them as switch extensions. He pulls one off and hands it to me, and he says, here you go. And I've got it somewhere in my garage. I think it's actually in my bookshelf, which is blocked by the Impala right now, the body, so I can't get into that drawer, but I have it somewhere in there as the switch extension that went with the shirt from that day. And I've talked to Dean about this since then. He says he remembers signing the shirt. He says he doesn't really remember the switch extension thing, but I have it to prove it, and I've showed it to him, and he's like, yeah, those were the ones I was running back then. So long story short, he and I we became friends over the years, and we don't see each other as much as we used to with the lowrider thing, because he's moved on to drag racing and he does, the Discovery Channel thing, and he's really big into that stuff now. And as a matter of fact, he's actually going to Australia with the Street Outlaws TV show to do some racing. So Dean's always been like that, though. He's always had a big personality, larger than life kind of guy. But we became friends over the years. And so anyways, long story short, at the end of that day from that event, I get home and I take my shirt off to see the autograph, and he had wrote, "To Billy, 97 world champ Dean Carnes." Okay, so I'm like, 97 world champ, what is he talking about? This was the day I got home and took this off. I had no idea what he was talking about. Fast forward about a month, and I go to the local mom and pop, gas station to get my issue of lowrider like I always did, and I'm thumbing through it, and I get to the hydraulic section, and there it was, Dean Carnes, Fairborn, Ohio, 97 street truck dance world champion. I couldn't believe it. I was like, holy cow. I had no idea, because the magazine hadn't came out yet, and I wasn't friends with Dean at that point. He was just somebody I admired and looked up to. But he had signed my shirt, 97 world champ, and this is one of my most prized things that I have from all those years ago. And like I said, I've talked to Dean about it, and he laughs about it now. But just being a young kid, that was really cool for him to do that for me. So I'm always thankful, for him doing that. Let's see. The last, sorry, this is also with Dean. So a couple years ago, I knew Dean was going to be at the Cavalcade of Customs in Cincinnati after he was doing the Street Outlaw thing. And if you're not familiar with that show, look him up on Street Outlaws. He's a pretty funny dude. But long story short, he had his Camaro, which ultimately he ended up wrecking and totaling. Thank God he survived. But he was racing the Crow, Big Chief from Street Outlaws, and there was a lot of controversy. So I knew Dean was going to be at this particular show, so I went online and printed out this picture from the TV show and had him sign it for me for old time's sake. And of course, he put flat tire at 160 ? No plate, to Billy, Disco Dean Carnes. So the controversy was that Dean actually beat Big Chief on the street, and there's always been like rumors that the show was edited to look like it was a tie, that Chief actually won, etc., etc., etc. But between Dean and I, he got a kick out of this. He thought it was funny, so I'm glad I have that to this day. But one of the last things I wanted to talk about on the collectability thing was this is right up here at the top. So my favorite, well, I shouldn't say my favorite dancer, but it's tied for my favorite dancer. One of them being the Joker from Red's Hydraulics. The second one would be El Sancho from Cool Cars, the CCE equipped Cutlass that competed for years in the street car dance category, and a lot of times it competed for points, and then other times it was just an exhibition vehicle. That car was very, very special to me because, for one, it was a Cutlass, and I had a Cutlass. I had an 86. Had a single pump in the rear because that's all I could afford back then, and cut coils in the front on some factory hubcaps. But long story short, they had a Cutlass, I had a Cutlass, I was naturally drawn to it. When I would go to the shows after the hydraulic competitions were over, whether it be in an arena or a stadium or even the fairgrounds, I would kind of make my way down to where they were, and I would look for paint chips on the ground. And I know that might sound strange to some of you, but you got to remember these cars had candy paint. Some of them had multiple layers of candy paint, metal flake, custom graphics, and that paint is thick and prone to chipping. And they're beating the snot out of these cars and trucks and whatever they were hopping at the time, and so paint chips would literally fall all over the place. And me being a 14, 15, 16-year-old kid, I just was looking for something from the show to take home as a collectible or a keepsake or something just to show my buddies and show all my friends. And so El Sancho was the car for me. And as a matter of fact, El Sancho is on the cover here of the 2000 catalog. The first time I had ever seen El Sancho, I think, was in '97 or '98. The first version of it. So there's been many versions of El Sancho. I believe this to be the second version. So I seen that vehicle hop at a couple shows, and I made my way down to where the vehicles were at and picked up paint chips. So these are paint chips from the second version of that car. Unfortunately, I didn't get paint chips from the first version because when I seen it at Cruise Fest Nationals, they had cut the roof off of it, and it had like a yellow frame, but it was purple. All the El Sanchos are purple, candy purple, and they had cut the roof off of it and had a yellow frame. And this was really early on in Midwest lowrider scene. It performed really well, but it wasn't like what it ultimately became to be. So long story short, I didn't see that car very long. I only saw it at like 1 or 2 competitions, and it was just one of those things where I couldn't get to the floor to get the paint chips from it. But the second version I did get paint chips from, and then ultimately I ended up getting paint chips from the third version as well, which is the last version of the car that I'm aware of. The big thing about all this with the El Sancho is I was at Cruise Fest Nationals. I want to say it was '04, maybe '05. I don't remember exactly, and I'll post a picture up now. A friend of mine, Jake Burton, who owned at the time Trendsetter Customs Hydraulics, Trendsetter Customs, he had built a Monte Carlo called Freak Show. And this was standing on the bumper way, way before they started doing it, the circus cars. This was way ahead of its time. Long story short, they were at the same event. And it was a wild, crazy party event, unlike anything I had ever seen. And Jimmy from Show and Go was there. All the CCE vehicles were there. But Saturday night comes, and it's Cruise Fest, and everybody's partying and having a good time, and these guys just decided to just hop their cars into one another. And we've all seen the video of the 2 Cutlasses battling together. The one's got air ride and the other one's got hydraulics, and the one with air ride just comes up and lands on top of the other one. We've all seen that video. If you're on social media, you've seen it. The picture I posted earlier of El Sancho and those cars was way ahead of that. And that party that night was just a party. It got out of control. Those guys were hopping their cars, having a good time, and it was all in good fun. And it really damaged the cars a lot. That event happened to be a 3-day event, so I remember staying the night. I think me and my girlfriend, who's now my wife, we slept in the car. And I woke up the next morning and I walked over to the hydraulic pit just to see the aftermath, because it was like a 11, 12 o'clock at night scenario, because it was just a big party. And laying next to the El Sancho was this. This is the header panel from El Sancho, the CCE Cutlass. The one, it was the same version that was on the catalog, but it was a later... Sorry, it wasn't the same. It was the same car, but it was a later version that had different paint. So if you look at I don't know how well this will show up on camera, but if you look at the 2 different paint chips, this is the later version and the last version of this car. That next morning, this was laying on the ground next to the car because one of the other cars had came down on the hood. And if you know that particular car, it was a Euro Clip, so it had 1-piece headlights. Anyways, this was laying on the ground, and I don't know what told me to do this. Just something told me, pick it up, take it home, and because it would have just been thrown away, So I did. I picked it up, and I kept this for a couple years, and then I started going to the Southern Showdown events, And I thought one year, I said, I'm going to take this with me to the event, because I know at the time, Brian Gillespie, he's the owner of Cool Cars, CC, Hijacker. Um, he's the owner of that business, and that was his show. So I thought, he's got to be there. And so I took a chance, and I brought this piece with me, and he was working his CCE booth, and standing right next to him at the time was, his number one switchman for dancing and hopping the CCE vehicles, which was Blinky, Jason Grimes. And I realized Jason was the one that was hopping the car when this broke off. And right there standing Brian, who owned the car. So I walked into where the show was at, and I said, "Excuse me, Mr. Gillespie, can I have a few minutes of your time? I wanted to show you something." And I had it in a book bag. He said, "Yeah, sure. Yeah, what do you got?" And I pulled this out of the book bag, and he looked at me. He goes, "That's where that went." And I said, "Oh, no." I instantly felt like, "Oh, no, what did I do?" He goes, "I wondered what happened to that." He goes, we put the car in the trailer, and it was busted up, and there was no salvaging this piece, but it was gone." And I said, "Yeah." I said, I'm the kid that picked it up off the ground and took it home with me." And he laughed hysterically. He goes, "Jason, come over here. You got to see this." So Jason walks over, and he goes, "I'll be damned. There it is." So they both, had recognized it. And we talked about this piece, and I told him, I said, that was my favorite car, favorite dancer. And I said, I saw this, and I thought, something just told me to take it home. And he goes, "Well, I'm glad you did." And I had a Sharpie on me, and I said, "Can you sign this for me?" And he said, "Absolutely. I'd love to." So he signed it here, and then Jason Grimes signed it, Blinky. And to this, that's almost 20 years ago, I think. That would have been 04, 05. So yeah, we're approaching 20 years, but I've had this forever. It's one of my favorite things. I like to show it to people when they come by if they're into this kind of thing, just because you don't see stuff like this. But maybe someday I'll get it, framed up or something like that. But anyways, that's my story with this. One of my favorite things I got. Let's see, what else did I want to touch on with the collectibles? I think that's pretty much going to cover that. So let me get reset up again, and I'll bring you back, and we'll get on to the next topic. So hang tight. All right, so let's, if you've made it this far through the video, hopefully you don't mind making it just a little bit longer. So this is speak on a topic for this video. We'll giveaway stuff will be immediately after the speak on topic, so hang tight. Let's get to this. I'll keep it real simple, try to keep it quick. This video speak on topic is about Joe Ray. Joe Ray's been in the news a lot lately concerning the Lowrider movement, what's going on with Lowrider magazine, his departure from Lowrider into his new company brand image, which is Original Lowrider. Something I came across, and those of you that do the podcast thing, that listen to podcasts, I had never heard of this podcast before until I come across the Joe Ray episode, but thank God I did, because it was a good one. So the name of that podcast would be The Real American Cholo. Okay, so total disclosure, I haven't listened to any of their other episodes, but if it's as good as this one, then it's one to keep on listening to. But their episode with Joe Ray was wow, it was eye-opening for me. I've always known who Joe Ray was, even from back in the early days when I first started reading Lowrider, like around 94, 95. Of course, Joe's history in lowriding goes way back, into the 60s and 70s. I mean, the guy's, he's been around, he's done it all. He was president of Lifestyle Car Club for a long time, and basically these guys on the podcast go into a lot of his history with lowriding. And then they talk about some stuff that's, he's gotten into now, where he's branched off, and started his own company. So that stuff's really cool. But there's one thing that sticks out in particular about the whole podcast, and spoiler alert, it's probably halfway through the podcast, but it's something that I've waited since I was a little kid to hear his side of the story. Now, there's two sides to every story. We all know that. When I first became aware of what I'm about to tell you, it was from one of the Lowrider magazine VHS tapes. Those, they used to put those out a couple times a year, I think, or they would put at least like one out a year for the Super Show, and that's exactly what I'm speaking about. I believe it was the 1994 or 1995 Super Show, where you had Joe Ray's Las Vegas car was competing against Armando Flores in the Loco 64 for Car of the Year. Now, if you old school guys out there know what I'm talking about, or even you young cats, I'll go ahead and fill you in. Basically, the point of the whole thing was these two cars were going head to head for Lowrider of the Year. Okay, Las Vegas, absolutely incredible build. Wow, I just remember seeing it in the magazines when I was a kid. Just blew my mind. And the same with Loco 64. Being an Impala guy, 64 Impala guy, that car was over the top, beautiful car, just perfect in every way for the most part, And the controversy surrounding this whole thing is that at the show, to compete for Lowrider of the Year back then, I don't know if it's still this way now, but back then it was, you had to show the judges that you could start the car, you could move forward, backwards, and you could turn the wheels left and right. And the controversy, the protesting, was from Armando Flores's camp. They were saying that the Las Vegas car was not capable of doing those things, and Loco 64 was. And the long story short is Joe Ray at the show talked to Alberto Lopez and the judges for the magazine and said, look, I can totally do everything that they're asking me to do. I just can't do it during the show because it takes several hours to tear apart my interior so I could get access to brake pedals, gas pedals, steering, doing all these things to convert this car from the custom show car that it was into a running, driving car was more of a challenge than most people realized. And I didn't know this when I first heard about the controversy way back then. As a little kid, you just don't think about those things. But these guys had like gold and chrome plated, suspension pieces and brake calipers and brake rotors and just things that you can't, normally would not drive on because of how they're done. You would ruin them the first time you drive them. So Joe fills everybody in on the podcast about what actually happened and what went down. He gives credit where credit is due to Armando. He says that he and Armando became friends, and that Armando eventually came to be employed in some way with Lowrider magazine. I think it was through the judging, and that him and Joe Ray still have on friendly terms today and a good relationship. But that wasn't the case in '94 because the Armando people, they thought they had the car of the year. And to this day, and Joe lays this out perfectly. He says, you're either Las Vegas camp or you're Loco 64 camp. Either way, you think you're the winner. And he's right, because I remember seeing the Lowrider magazine VHS tape about this exact show, and what had happened was Armando and their people, they figured out what was going on and that Joe was going to win, and they protested, and they went. This car had a full turntable, so it would spin at the show. They protested. They went and pulled the car off the turntable, put the wheels on it, and fired that car up and drove it out of the stadium past Las Vegas. And while they're doing this, you know, they're hitting the switches. They're side to side. They're doing front to back. They're revving the engine. This car had like gold-plated headers and gold-plated everything that you could gold plate on this thing. You know, just back then, just way over the top, and it would still be over the top today. But in protest, you know, they fired their car up and they drove out of there, and that was the lasting impression that I got from the VHS. Now, fast forward, you know, see, 94, 2004, 2014, 2024, so almost 30 years ago, you're finally getting Joe's side of the story. And I've been waiting forever for him or someone to ask him about this, or for him to talk publicly about it. I don't know if he's done that anywhere else, but he did on this podcast, The Real American Cholo. So if you are a history buff like me, or, you know, love the lowriding history aspect of automotive car building, definitely one to listen to. And he talks about where he's going now and what his new company, his new venture is going to be. And ultimately his message is, you know, we have to protect what is ours. And by that, I think he means, you know, the culture, lowriding, keeping it alive. He talks about the magazines, you know, will there ever be another magazine? You know, why did the magazines die out? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he left me with the impression of who's going to take care of this when I'm gone. And it's pretty heavy stuff to think about, because whether you're a Joe Ray fan or not, behind the scenes, he's had his hands in, you know, the magazine, the culture, everything about it for over 30 years. And more specifically, for about 15 years as an editor of Lowrider magazine. So he was there till the very end, and he talks about that. So, The Real American Cholo. Guys, check it out, listen to it, get your headphones, listen to it at work. Pretty good stuff. So now we will get to our giveaway. And this is a 1,000 subscriber giveaway. Like I said, I'm 1,037, 1,038, something like that at this recording. I've gone back and forth on how I was going to do this, and to be honest with you, it was kind of overwhelming because I've never done one of these on this scale. But I've been thinking about what did I want to do for a giveaway, and this is just the first one. I would like to do several of these if I can. You know, maybe like I'm on the 1,000 one now, maybe 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. Do something big each time, and even though the first one's not going to be the biggest, it's important to me, it's special to me, and it's my way of showing appreciation to all of you and giving back to you guys. So, you know, my channel is mostly focused on hands-on stuff. Do things yourself, invest in yourself. That's the big thing. So I was thinking, okay, maybe I could buy a welding helmet, or I could buy, you know, a roll of meg wire and, you know, something related to help a guy at home get his project started, or something to keep him going. So instead of doing that and making it really difficult on myself trying to ship somebody a helmet that the shipping might cost more than the helmet, I just decided to do a gift card. So what I'm going to do is, if this is even possible, the first 50 people to comment on this video giveaway, the actual word giveaway, the first 50, and here's the other rule, you have to be subscribed to my channel, okay? This is for people who support me because I want to support them. If you're subscribed and you comment giveaway, this is for you, okay? The first 50 people to do that will be entered to win a gift card to, I figured I would just make it easy. Most cities, you know, have one of these stores. If not, you can buy stuff online, to Harbor Freight. And Harbor Freight's like, yeah, it's not the best, but it's something to get a guy going, whether he needs a tool set or a roll of meg wire or some welding gloves or a tape measure. You can find just about anything there. So it's going to be for Harbor Freight, and we're going to do 25 bucks, okay, to the winner. So yeah, it's not a lot right now, guys, but maybe on the next one I can do something bigger. but this is just my way of showing appreciation to you guys. So remember, you have to be subscribed. The first 50 people to comment giveaway who are subscribers are entered to win. And then I'll do probably some kind of live drawing on either YouTube or I'll film a drawing like a number generator or something and post it maybe in my shorts or whatever on my short videos. But that's what I'm doing. I hope everybody appreciates that because it means a lot to me, and I'm thankful for all of you being here. So with that being said, I think that's going to end this video. So if you've stuck through this long, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you for watching till the end. I hope the giveaway goes good. I hope I got at least 50 people out of 1,037 that are going to comment on this thing. So best of luck to you. I look forward to getting that out to the lucky winner. And as always, please like and subscribe. Ask me any questions you want about Impala builds or any of this stuff you see here, and I'll be more than happy to answer those. So thank you very, very much. Take care.